The Black Death was a terrible plague that swept through Europe with a ferocity that left entire communities decimated. It was a time of unimaginable suffering and fear, as the disease showed no mercy to anyone, regardless of age, status, or wealth. It struck Europe in the 14th century, a period already fraught with hardship and strife. The continent was still recovering from the effects of the Great Famine, and the arrival of the plague only compounded the misery of the people. This devastating disease was one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. Millions of people died and the social and economic fabric of Europe was torn apart. Entire villages were wiped out, and the death toll was so high that mass graves became a common sight. The plague likely started in Asia, where it had already caused significant devastation before making its way to Europe. The exact origins are still debated by historians, but it is widely believed that the disease spread from the steppes of Central Asia. It traveled along trade routes carried by merchants and travelers who unknowingly brought the deadly pathogen with them. These routes were the lifelines of commerce and communication, but they also became conduits for the spread of the plague. These routes connected east and west, facilitating not only the exchange of goods and ideas but also the transmission of diseases. The interconnectedness of the medieval world meant that once the plague took hold, it spread rapidly and uncontrollably. Fleas on rats carried the disease. The bacterium Yersinia pestis, which caused the plague, was transmitted through the bites of infected fleas. These fleas found a perfect host in the black rats that were common in medieval towns and cities. The Black Death first reached Europe in the 1340s, making its initial landfall in the bustling port cities. These cities were hubs of trade and travel, making them particularly vulnerable to the rapid spread of the disease. It came from trading ships sailing from the Black Sea. These ships, laden with goods and passengers, also carried a deadly cargo, rats infested with plague-carrying fleas. These ships carried infected rats, which disembarked at various ports along their routes. The rats, in turn, spread the fleas to the local rodent populations, creating a chain reaction of infection. The rats spread the plague to port cities, where the disease quickly took hold. The crowded and unsanitary conditions of these cities provided the perfect breeding ground for the plague to thrive. From there, it was a short jump to the rest of Europe. The plague spread like wildfire, moving from city to city, town to town, leaving a trail of death and despair in its wake. The impact of the Black Death was profound, reshaping the course of European history in ways that are still felt today. Imagine a map of Europe. Now picture the Black Death spreading like wildfire. It moved rapidly, traveling along trade routes. The disease was highly contagious. People didn't know how to stop it. They had no immunity to this new plague. The plague traveled from person to person. It also spread through the air. Cities were hit particularly hard. Overcrowding helped the disease spread faster. The Black Death was incredibly deadly. It killed an estimated 30 to 60% of Europe's population. This was a staggering loss of life in a very short time. Imagine entire villages wiped out. Cities became places of horror. The dead were buried in mass graves. The living were overwhelmed with grief. The impact on families was devastating. Children were orphaned. Parents lost sons and daughters. The social fabric of Europe was torn apart. The value of labor economy in the wake of plague. The Black Death had a profound impact on the economy. The plague, which swept through Europe in the mid-14th century, decimated the population, killing an estimated 25 to 30 million people. This catastrophic loss of life had far-reaching consequences, particularly on the economic structures of the time. With so many dead, there were severe labor shortages. Fields lay fallow and entire villages were abandoned. The sudden and dramatic reduction in the workforce meant that there were not enough people to tend to the land, harvest crops, or maintain the infrastructure of medieval society. This upended the feudal system. The feudal system, which had been the backbone of medieval European society, relied heavily on a large, stable population of peasants to work the land. These peasants were bound to the land and to their lords, providing labor in exchange for protection and a place to live. This system relied on peasants working the land. However, with the drastic reduction in the peasant population, the very foundation of the feudal system was shaken. Landowners, who had once had a surplus of labor, now found themselves in a dire situation. Landowners suddenly had no one to work for them. The fields that had once been bustling with activity were now eerily quiet. The lords, who had depended on the labor of their peasants, were left with vast tracts of land that they could not cultivate or manage on their own. Peasants who survived demanded higher wages. Recognizing their newfound leverage, the surviving peasants began to negotiate for better terms. They were no longer willing to accept the meager conditions that had been imposed on them for generations. They knew their labor was valuable. The scarcity of labor meant that each worker's contribution was more critical than ever before. Peasants began to realize that they could demand higher wages and better working conditions, and many took advantage of this opportunity to improve their lot in life. This challenged the old order. The demands of the peasants and the resulting changes in the labor market led to significant social upheaval. The traditional power dynamics between lords and peasants were disrupted, leading to a period of instability and change. It gave peasants more bargaining power. The shift in the balance of power allowed peasants to negotiate for better terms and conditions, ultimately leading to a gradual transformation of the medieval economic and social landscape. The Black Death, while devastating, set the stage for a new era of labor relations and economic development in Europe. Shifting sands, society transformed. The Black Death led to major social changes. People questioned authority, they questioned the church, they wondered why God had allowed such suffering. Some people turned to religion, they sought comfort in faith. Others blamed marginalized groups. This led to persecution. The plague also changed art and literature. Death became a central theme. Artists and writers grappled with the immense loss. Beyond the grave long-term impacts and echoes of the plague, the Black Death had long-lasting consequences. The decline of feudalism accelerated, new social structures emerged, Europe's population gradually recovered. It took centuries to reach pre-plague levels. The pandemic left an indelible mark on European history. The plague also forced improvements in sanitation. People realized the importance of hygiene. This had a lasting impact on public health. Conclusion? Lessons from the Black Death. The Black Death was a tragedy of immense proportions. Sweeping through Europe in the mid-14th century, it decimated populations, wiping out nearly a third of the continent's inhabitants. The sheer scale of the devastation was unprecedented, leaving towns and villages deserted and families torn apart. The pandemic's reach was vast, affecting not just the common folk but also the nobility and clergy. No one was spared from its deadly grasp. Yet it also led to significant changes. The aftermath of the Black Death saw a transformation in the social and economic structures of Europe. With a significant portion of the population gone, labor became scarce, leading to better wages and working conditions for peasants. This shift in power dynamics began to erode the rigid feudal system that had dominated medieval Europe for centuries. The scarcity of workers also spurred technological innovations and changes in agricultural practices. It reshaped European society and left a lasting legacy. The Black Death forced people to rethink their relationship with life, death, and faith. The Church, which had been a dominant force, faced scrutiny and criticism for its inability to protect the populace. This period of questioning and doubt laid the groundwork for the Renaissance and the eventual Reformation, movements that would forever change the cultural and religious landscape of Europe. The pandemic reminds us of the fragility of life. It serves as a stark reminder that despite our advancements, we are still vulnerable to the forces of nature. The Black Death's impact on families and communities was profound, with many losing loved ones and entire generations being wiped out. The collective trauma experienced by society left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness of Europe. It highlights the importance of public health and our interconnectedness. The Black Death underscored the necessity of medical knowledge and the development of public health measures. Quarantines, isolation of the sick, and the establishment of hospitals became more prevalent as societies sought to combat the spread of the disease. These early public health initiatives laid the foundation for modern practices and emphasized the need for a coordinated response to health crises. By understanding the Black Death, we can learn from the past. Studying this catastrophic event provides valuable insights into how societies respond to pandemics, the importance of scientific research, and the need for preparedness. The lessons learned from the Black Death are still relevant today as we face new and emerging health threats. It teaches us the importance of resilience, adaptability, and the continuous pursuit of knowledge. We can better prepare for future challenges and build a more resilient world. By applying the lessons from the past, we can develop strategies to mitigate the impact of future pandemics. Investing in healthcare infrastructure, promoting scientific research, and fostering global cooperation are crucial steps in ensuring a safer and healthier future for all. The Black Death, though a dark chapter in history, offers a beacon of hope and a guide for navigating the uncertainties of tomorrow. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos.